Hey, it's Curly. I know I look completely different. There's less here, nothing here, but it is actually me. Wanted to do something a little bit different today. We're going to try and see if we can rate or do a tier list of all of the ride lines that we currently have access to in overdress before sets 5 and also the lyrical set comes out. So I think when this video comes up is when the lyrical set actually comes out, which means obviously any of the lyrical ride lines that are on this are not counting any of the support that they're getting. I figured if I did this, if I waited for that set to see myself how those cards were, I would probably never end up making this video because it would be then we get like set 5 and then like, you know, festival collection, just a lot of things start piling up and I probably won't get a little gap until like maybe September. I think that there's not going to be that many releases as of yet, but in any case this is going to be super interesting just because I haven't really been playing a lot of TCG Vanguard lately. I've been mainly playing Vanguard 0 and that's due to a combination of things. Or just me, you know, moving around and having not as much time to be able to go in person. But now that it's been 6 months since my surgery, I think I'm in a good spot where I can actually try and go to locals. There is a local card shop somewhat nearby, which for the most part supports Vanguard. So we're going to go ahead and try and check that out. But all of that is to say that this is going to be my filthy noob pleb opinions, so don't get too salty in the comments. So right off the top, we have here Nirvana. So this is Nirvana with Mahar Nirvana and the new Esper Idea, I think it is. This deck seems to be pretty interesting in that it is, in my opinion, a little one note in what it can do. It kind of just throws out big numbers, attacks, and that's kind of it. Those big numbers are kind of annoying and you can get like crits and stuff, but I feel like they require a lot of setup and they can be sort of disrupted pretty easily. I could be wrong about that. So I think it's actually a really solid deck. I'll put it up here in A just because I feel like those numbers can be hard to deal with sometimes, but again, you can pretty easily, I think, disrupt them. And I guess I should explain how these tiers are going to work. So S is basically just really good. A is, I guess, really viable. B is something that just kind of needs some help and then it'll be really good. And then C is just, it's in a really rough spot, to just sum it up really quickly. Speaking of being in a rough spot, Eugene is going to go in that spot as well. It's kind of been there since the start. The main problem, I believe, with Eugene is that there's not really a necessity to retire stuff. Most decks, I think ever since, you know, set 2 Bruce and Leonard, people don't really play stuff when they don't need to, so they don't really need to commit a lot of things on board, and a lot of decks kind of don't need a lot on board to begin with, and they play multiple copies of those things, so if you retire it, it's really not that big of a deal. So I don't think Eugene really has a lot to work with right now, the way things currently are. Likewise, Overlord is kind of in that same vein, though it is a bit more of the aggressive version of Eugene. I think Overlord is just a little bit better. I don't know how it's going to be once it gets the end support in set 5. But in general, a lot of the support that it gets seems to be pretty good. I don't think it's going to be like shooting up here, but I think it'll be like, instead of being here, it'll be like over here, closer to here, is kind of what I think will happen. Then the final Dragon Empire ride line that we have here is actually about Sagra. I think about Sagra is really, really good. I don't think she's up here. I think the orders and whatnot make her just a little bit too clunky to actually get up here, but I do think she's like top like A tier, somewhere around there. She's very good. She can retire whole board. Very good defensive options, very good offensive options, just the whole package, honestly. Buff Sagra is the whole package. So this is probably going to be one of the ones that annoy people. Bruce, I think, has always been good since it released, but to be honest, it doesn't seem like grade 4 Bruce is really all that great, especially considering a lot of people are still using the normal Bruce as their sort of main Vanguard and focus of the deck. So I think Bruce is fine. I guess it's technically better than Sagra. I don't think it merits being up here per se, but I think it is like really good. It just, out of all the tools that everyone got, I think Bruce got the weakest out of all of them, so that's why it's just kind of there, but it's still strong given what it had before. Feral Magus got amazing support in set 4, you know, it really changed up the game. Set 3, we got really good consistency with the Pandemonium Tactics, which is really good, and we got a lot of like powerful tools like the Goemon and stuff like that. So I think Feral Magus is actually in a really great spot. It is, in my opinion, can you move it out of the way, Bruce? He just did not want to move. He is the top of A tier. I think you can argue that it's here, but I would just knock it down here just because of the fact that it is still mildly RNG based, right? If there is some sort of way to reduce that RNG, if we can just get some sort of selective soul charge, like on place, look at 3 cards, put 2 of them into your soul or something like that, then I think this shoots up here, right? But the fact that we can just soul charge most of our good cards and not be able to do much at sometimes is kind of what puts this in extremely good, but maybe not the best, right? Greedon's here. Honestly, it kind of really needs something pretty big. It's gonna suck because it's probably gonna be specific for Greedon, but I think what it could really use is maybe like a card that when it goes into the soul, you can countercharge maybe, so that way you can maybe make more use of your Incanes and your Goemons, maybe at least that would help out a lot. They also just need some sort of easier way to swarm the field, even if it's like Greedon specific, just to make the requirement a lot of it easier. So if you can make their like Vanguard swing more dangerous and then make the requirement to reach it a little bit more dangerous, the deck might be like here. But I think in general, just because of how the deck insists on playing, I don't think it'll ever be up here unless they completely get a completely different grade playstyle, like we get a grade 4 Greedon or we get a new grade 3 Greedon or something like that, but then all of its support is going to be useless, which means, you know, what I'm saying is they're going to have to get a different playstyle, but I think Greedon's in a really rough spot right now. Then going into Keter Sanctuary, for some reason Bastion is really good. Bastion's been really good since like forever, except for maybe like set 3 was a little bit in a rough spot. But set 4, apparently Bastion Prime is really good. I still think that deck is just fucking, you draw a hand of bricks and pray to God you don't get stepped on. But it has seen a lot of results, and I have played it a little bit, and I have been able to like get stomped on and then come back and stomp my opponent. So that's why I guess I can agree that it is one of the best decks that we have right now. Then unfortunately, coming up next for Keter Sanctuary, Hexorb Sorceress is not really in a good spot. She got some interesting support. You know, the grade 2 that lets you sort of, I think, look at top card when it attacks and stuff. And then the La Larita and the, not Pia, but the girl that also lets you stand, gave her some interesting options. It's just that everything costs just way too much to get anything to, you know, get going at all, right? So they just need to give her either a super easy way to get resources, you know, give us some sort of inlet pulse or something like that maybe is only specific to Hexorb Sorceress, because I don't need I don't think Bastion needs access to something crazy like an inlet pulse, especially as a grade 3. But give her something that either lets her get resources or just make it so much easier to do the things he needs to do, because having a counterblast, soul blast for just about any effect and not really having a good way to get that cost back, and also the effect being as minimal as just look at the top card of your deck, is kind of disappointing. So she's in a really rough spot, but she's in a much better spot than some of these guys, just because, you know, you can still sometimes get huge numbers, because plus 10s on crits is really good. You can go ahead and very easily check your overtrigger because you know it's going to be coming. You can plan ahead for that. Getting drive checks, powering up your units from those drive checks is still really solid. So there's a lot of potential here in terms of the playstyle of this deck. It's just not being achieved at all right now. Phantom Blaster Dragon I don't think is very good. I don't think it just has like a good game plan. To be honest, I don't think it really does much. It obviously doesn't have a lot of support yet. This is going to change in set 5. So right now it's somewhere here in C. It just doesn't really... I don't feel like it has a very good like win condition, right? Which is kind of why this deck somewhat struggles. Next up, we have Brightgate with Seraph Snow here. Initially, I was hearing a lot about Seraph Snow or Pure Light, the grade 4 being just crazy good. It's like automatically here, everyone was using it, etc, etc. That didn't seem to be like the case once we got it, and it might just be because Accused Makurate was a promo that was really hard to get for us, and it was also delayed. So I think the deck is like here, you know. I feel like all of the decks that are here can handle Seraph Snow rather easily, so it doesn't really matter. And then even some of the decks here don't care too much about it. So she definitely like trashes anything else under it. But I think it's like very good. It's just, I guess everyone just knows how to work around it. So I'm just gonna put it around there. And next up we have Orphis. Orphis, I feel like, is in a similar situation to, or has a similar sort of strategy to like Nirvana, because they somewhat do the same thing. You know, they get pretty big columns, they can restand, they can get some crit pressure and whatnot. Just Nirvana does it, I guess, way better, and they can even, you know, burn your opponent for 1 damage and all that jazz. Coming into set 4, Orphis didn't really get anything too huge. It got like 1 defensive card and then a grade 3 that I think doesn't really do too much. So I think Orphis is maybe somewhere down here, right? I'd say it's probably better than these guys, but that might not be saying too much. Next up is Gravidia. So, I'm sure everyone probably puts this up here, and it's like a really good deck and does all these things. I don't know, I feel like it's like here-ish. Like I feel like it's really good, but I feel like some of this stuff here is just better. I also feel like maybe Barrow might be better. I can already hear the furious typings, but I don't know, Gravidia just, it seems good. So I'm putting it here just based off like what I've heard. I've never really played Gravidia much, so I can't really speak to it, so that's probably why I don't have such a high opinion of it as everyone else. But I'm just gonna put that there, and we're just gonna move on. Then we've got Magnolia Elder. Magnolia is kind of funny because set 1 it was kind of okay, set 2 I think it was in a bit of a rough spot, especially thanks to like Bruce. Set 3 it got some support, but it was still in a really rough spot. Then set 4 it jumped all the way up here. I think Magnolia Elder is really good. I think it has really good tools. Flagberg is amazing. All of the resource generation that Sortier has and that Magnolia specifically can use is extremely good. Getting in multiple attacks at your opponent's face and, you know, doing all the things that it can do is, I think, really good. So I think Magnolia Elder is up here. It's probably like the weakest of what I would put in S tier, because I do think it has some trouble sometimes with certain decks. They can give it some trouble, and it still requires a little bit of setup and whatnot. And you have to run a bunch of like somewhat bricks, right? Because you have to run the grade 4s plus Flagberg. You can't really guard with any of that. You don't really have anything that really gives you a lot of shield value, so you're not super defensive. Whereas like Bastion can sort of make use of that and play down a bunch of grade 3s, right? Yeah, Magnolia's good. I still don't really know what Zorga does. So we're just, I guess, I don't know, I guess it's better than Hexorb. No, I'll just put it after Hexorb. He's dead, what does he care? Then we have Flagberg here. Flagberg is a very interesting deck, because in set 3 it was announced, or so I should say released, and it got a little bit of support, but it had a lot of trouble getting anything done, given what it was given. In theory, Flagberg itself was really good, but a lot of its pieces, for one, they were Flagberg specific, which was a bit of a letdown, and 2, it was just really super cost heavy. Then Bushiroad decided set 4 that Storkea is some sort of like giant tree of like resource gathering, and it gave it really, really good support. And I actually think Flagberg is amazing. Flagberg is like here. In my opinion, it's one of the top 3 decks right now. Most people would probably like do this, which is probably fine, but I'm gonna do this because I can. And the thing about Flagberg is that it's just really good at doing just about everything, which is one of the things that used to annoy me about Aqua Force. But this deck can draw, this deck can retire, this deck can multi-attack, this deck can get power, this deck has a ridiculous guard restrict, right? And it has access to orders, and it has access to easy ways to get resources. It is just really good. So that actually does it for the main sort of right lines here. Then we got next up the lyrical sets here. This is gonna be sort of what of a speed run, because really it's just Laurel that can really do much. Everyone else is kind of been in a rough spot. Hopefully that changes with the new set. I don't know much about the new lyrical set. I just know I think Kyrie gets a grade 4 and is actually really good, and I think Willista also does, or that's not Willista, this is Willista, and she maybe gets a little bit better, but that's as far as I know. I think Laurel maybe got 1 or 2 cards that make her a little better, but she's kind of still in the same spot. So Estelle here is gonna go down here and see, you know, in concept, the gimmick and all is really cool. I don't think it's very well executed yet. I think they really need a more sort of stronger game plan, stronger win condition to be able to do something. So I do have a lot of hopes for this. It's probably my favorite, especially going into Lyrical being announced. This was my favorite, but it ended up being kind of the most meh to play, in my opinion. Hopefully I don't have to say in my opinion for all of these. Willista is kind of in the same deal. It just kind of doesn't do enough. So it kind of gets stuck down here as well. Kyrie and Clarissa kind of think like they have a good a better leg up than the other two, but they're still kind of like not too great. Kyrie's kind of good at, in general, they're all really good because they can just about use all of their other card support. Kyrie's really good because he's like very generic. Clarissa's pretty good because she's, you know, brawler, wipe your field and whatnot, but that doesn't really matter too much, right? It matters a little bit for, like, let's say Magnolia, but they have like Panthero and like all of these Monster Reborn cards that they can bring back. Flagberg really only plays like 2 rear guards and that's it, and the other one is Inlet Pulse that just goes into the soul anyways, so you don't really have a lot of targets. Bastion's probably gonna beat the shit out of you before you get to attack their board anyways. Barrow, you know, they at most usually only have 2 cards out on field, so that doesn't really matter to them. So a lot of the top decks don't really care about that as much because they don't really amass a board presence once it comes to the opponent's turn. Then Laurel here, I think it's still really good. We're gonna put it here in A. I think it's still really good. It's maybe only the bottom end of it just because it doesn't really have any of the new tools that everyone has to play with. Not even like even not even talking about support for her specifically, but just the fact that we have like effect triggers and stuff like that and they don't, just automatically kind of gives us an edge. But on top of all the other things that all of these ride lines get. But the sort of win condition for Laurel is still amazing. I think it's going to be probably amazing for a while, because just being able to go in with like 60 something attack on a Vanguard swing and it being, you know, not blockable by Sentinels is really huge. Felty Rosa here, I'm gonna put her, I don't know, somewhere here-ish. I was originally the least excited about Felty Rosa when these were all announced, just because she looks like 02 from that garbage anime, and I don't really like 02 or the garbage anime. But in terms of playstyle, I actually like her, I think, the most, since Elstelle is kind of meh. So I think I like her the most, but she doesn't really have, again, like any sort of like win condition that's very consistent or very good. So I'm hoping eventually she gets up here with the new support, but we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. And that does it for all of the lyrical ride lines. Then next up, we've got the token Rambo stuff here, which I'm sure no one even knows what the fuck any of these are. So I'll kind of roughly go over what they play like, and spoiler alert, they're not that great. They kind of have the same issue with the lyrical set, in that they don't really have any other good support. The only thing is that they came out even later than the lyrical support, which kind of sucks. And they also, in general, they didn't have anything crazy. Like, they didn't have their own Laurel, which was really good. their effects are kind of tame, unfortunately. Alright, so this is, I believe, Kimitsu here. We did a profile of this on the channel, actually. He sort of does like a Magus Oracle Think Tank kind of playstyle where you look at the top cards of your deck, and then you can sort of manipulate them a little bit, and you also get powered up if you don't have any face-up cards in your damage, so it's kind of cool. In theory, that's great, but it doesn't really do much, you know, unfortunately, so we're going to put this here. This is, I believe, Kotetsu. Kotetsu has a sort of like Magnolia style playstyle where you want to get like a full board, and I think you can multi-attack with it if I remember correctly, but it doesn't really have an Impix or anything like that. So setting up a full board in this day and age is kind of rough, buddy. Then next up, this is, gotta look over, I think this is Kanasawa, maybe? My understanding is that he has a sort of more like Death Army playstyle, if you don't remember from the original Vanguard. Death Army is kind of like, or the playstyle I should say more specifically, is you sort of rest a bunch of your units to like get an effect to power up your Vanguard. So that's kind of what this deck does. You rest a bunch of your units and you can like get power, retire, draw, etc. and power up your Vanguard and whatnot. I think it's like okay. I think it has some slight potential, but it's not very good. This is not Yoshi. I think this is Konohiro here. This one I think might actually be kind of good because he has two things. He focuses on retiring, which is fine. You know, Eugene does that, right? That doesn't make him any good. But also, he has the ability where if your opponent has open rearguard circles, I think it might be only in the back row, he actually gets power on your opponent's turn, which is really good. Maybe not really good, but it's kind of cool, right? So you can actually use that. You can kind of force your opponent to play stuff in the back just to be able to lower the Vanguard's power, but then you have skills that let you retire that anyways, right? So I think it has some slight potential there. And then Yoshiyuki, I don't really remember what he does, but he's just kind of, I think he focuses sort of like on persona writing, and I think he can multi-attack. I think that's what it is. When you attack, if you persona write, I think you can like call something from your hand or your deck or something like that. So he's like, okay, there's definitely some potential there, but I don't think it's, compared to everything else, it's unfortunately not that great. Maybe if we get a, you know, additional booster for them, but I don't think that might be the case. So really quickly, let's sort of organize this a little bit within the sets. All right, so I think this works. Presumably Bastion is the best deck for some reason. I think Flagberg is right up there, and then Elder. If you guys want, I guess I'll put the video here since I know it makes you probably really upset. Let's put Nirvana like around here. I think it looks about right. Maybe Buff Sagra over Bruce. No, not. I just feel like Buff Sagra is a lot more balanced, but I don't know if that exactly makes her better. So we'll just leave it there. Laurel is definitely in the bottom there. For B, I think that might be about the same. Maybe put Overlord over here. Zorga might be better than Hexor. I don't know, but whatever. Like I said, he's dead. He doesn't give a shit where I put him. Then for the C tier here, doesn't really matter too much. There's not really anything too great, but I guess if you like put all these units in a fight, Eugene would probably come out on top. This can probably go down here. This might be over here. This would be like over here. This would probably be down here. It probably looks something like that. And yeah, that is my tier list for sets 4. Knowing, I want to say the bare minimum about these decks. I mean, I definitely know the majority of their playstyles and sort of what their deck attempts to do and their win condition and all that stuff. But there's obviously a lot more intricacies that I'm not super aware of, because aside from the fact that I'm not really playing a lot of overdress right now, I'm also not playing competitively at the moment. That'll probably change literally this month, but April and some of the other months were a little bit weirder for me. But in any case, that's been my list. I'll have, I guess, the link to the list in the description below if you guys want to do your own. But other than that, let me know what you thought about this list, and be kind, please. And until next time, take care of yourself.